Hello, welcome to the Pop Off PCMag's video game show. I'm Jordan Miner. Today we're talking about Lost Ark and just sort of MMOs in general and kind of how they're having a moment right now. The genre that I know personally very little about, but I'm joined by two guests who know a lot about it. Starting off, Gabe Zamora, my
Hey, how's it going, guys?
co-worker. And then we've got here a guy named Mike Williams of Fanbyte. Is that the website?
It's Fanbyte, yes.
Okay.
More directly, the Link Shell, which is directly about Final Fantasy XIV, one of those many MMOs that you speak of.
Cool.
Those weird online live service games.
Rumors have it that Mike has worked with some other websites in the past too, but I can not confirm or deny. So Lost Ark, Gabe, you reviewed it for us and a lot of people are reading about it. What is Lost Ark and why do we care?
Lost Ark, to my understanding, I didn't do a whole lot of research into the history of it, but I believe it came out in 2018 or 2019, but one of those times. And it's a top-down, sort of Diablo-looking action game. It's not exactly Diablo style, like your skills are on cooldowns like you would in a traditional MMO, but it's very action kind of, I guess, beat 'em up heavy. But with a lot of MMO elements to it. So there's multiplayer, so there's PvP, there's dungeon crawling, there's endgame raiding, and there's a lot of loot to collect and grind and build for. And each class that I played, I haven't played too many of them in the private test servers prior to launch. They're all very unique classes. There's something for pretty much everybody. I think the only thing it doesn't have is the traditional MMO Trinity. They have like a tanky kind of class, but for the most part, everybody's responsible for their own DPS and they're managing their own health. Like there is like a healer or a couple of healer potential classes, but that's not really their designated role. It's more everybody is kind of like in it for themselves and everybody's responsible for learning the mechanics of the bosses. So it's simpler in that respect. So if you like that sort of top-down action, it's really easy to get into, which is why I think it's surging in popularity right now. On top of the fact that it looks great for a pretty modern game. It's very much like Terra, if you're familiar with the aesthetic, that kind of Korean, very anime style, visual faces, very over-designed armor, really like fancy over-the-top monsters, and really flashy action.
Like Terra, Black Desert Online, a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
And as Gabriel was saying, this came out in Korea previously.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon didn't develop this. This is just something they have translated over.
Mm-hmm.
I do think part of it is people are hungry for new online worlds, but there's like probably like 3 bits. Like people are hungry for new online worlds. It's pretty easy to get into, but also Amazon owns Twitch and they're very good about pushing their games in front of like I think people would have glommed onto Lost Ark. I don't know if they would have got into it enough to make it. I think it's like the 4th highest concurrent Steam game ever. Like, so some of that is timing, some of that is game, some of that is, having your parent company own the platform that is used to promote a lot of these things.
That Amazon connection is interesting because we've kind of seen them in these past few years sort of, I think, stumble with a lot of their like gaming initiatives. Like what was that shooter they had that they canceled? Was it? It's not
Crucible.
Valorant. Crucible.
It was
right.
Crucible, which was okay. Then New World, which also had that big like huge concurrent bump in the beginning, but then the problem with an online game is that you have to keep managing it after the fact, and New World just like kept running into every rake week after week. And Lost Ark should not have that problem because, again, this is a game that has been running elsewhere just
for 2
fine.
years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, yeah, just sort of like worked its kinks out before kind of this bigger debut. Okay,
Right.
Cool. Yeah, and also just to note, people are looking for a virtual. We've all been stuck in a virtual world for like 2 years, so we gotta mix it up with these these MMOs.
Yeah, and that is also part of the other thing. Like I'm sure the pandemic probably helps that. Like if you've looked at like streaming services, YouTube retention, gaming, like all of that stuff that people can do while they're at home has grown much faster since we all are at home. So now people are like, oh, I mean, I guess I do have like 50 to 60 hours to give to one game, since I'm at home anyways.
Yeah, I'm curious about, because Gabe, you cover for us a lot of games I've never heard of in my life from all sorts of different parts of the world. And I'm just trying to kind of nail down, I guess, more about what about this one is kind of popping off with people. You mentioned the accessibility. We've talked about how it's had kind of time to work its kinks out. We talked about Amazon pushing it. But is there any kind of, all that is a lot, but is there anything else maybe we're kind of overlooking?
I don't know about overlooking. I do think that the Amazon push is definitely something you should keep in mind, is that this is being published by Amazon, so it's getting a lot of attention because of it. But the flip side is that just like a lot of Korean MMOs, they tend to have a very specific niche audience that's always watching them. So I remember back in like 2012 when Blade and Soul was first launched, there was a lot of American and European audiences waiting for that game to come out. So they had their eyes on it. It didn't get as much attention, obviously, because it doesn't have Amazon publishing it. But I think that's kind of the thing, is that you already had a group of people kind of like watching it like hawks, waiting for it to come out. And then the push with Amazon just kind of like blew it up so that everybody else can see it too. So you have 2 years of basically constant updates and content to work through, as well as a very highly polished experience overall, with a lot of people who are already anticipating playing it, and now the Amazon push to put it in front of everybody's window. So I think all of those kind of combined are what create the situation right now. And like I said in the review, ultimately what really determines the longevity of Lost Ark, aside from the content, which we know we're getting because they're constantly updating it over there in Korea, is the cash shop. Now, when I reviewed it, it was the test servers, so we didn't really get a good look at the cash shop and what you can do. I have new code for it, so I was thinking of jumping back into, like, I downloaded it, but I haven't really, like, the new servers, I haven't decided which server I want to play in, but I probably will, because in the future I might update the review with more information and idea of what the cash shop is shaping into. But that's really what's going to make or break the game, I think, is if the cash shop is kind of garbage and, it's too much pay for convenience or too much pay to win, I think it's going to start turning people off. But I guess that remains to be seen.
Yeah. And also as part of this, like there's a lot of Asian, and it's actually starting to happen with European developers as well, but a lot of Asian studios have been working in mobile, and they're now moving to PC.
Totally. Yeah.
And bringing that sort of expertise. And like Genshin Impact was the same way. They had like 3 Honkai Impact games before they launched Genshin Impact for more platforms than just mobile. And the folks behind Lost Ark are Smilegate, and they have been, they're probably like 10 or 15 games deep. A lot of that has been mobile, but now they're starting to really do more PC stuff, more console stuff. Not all of their stuff is as successful. Like Crossfire X, which is the shooter that just came out on Game Pass, is also Smilegate. And
it's like huge in Asia, but like no one here had heard of it.
No one knew anything about Crossfire. So Crossfire X is their sort of move over into doing more console stuff. I've heard that the launch isn't as smooth, even though it's on Game Pass. There have been some issues here and there. But I think you're going to start seeing a lot of these originally mobile-focused Asian developers start to transition over to PC and console more, and bringing some of those learnings. More free-to-play games that are visually amazing, easy to get into, probably pretty cash shop heavy, trying to get, but the barrier to entry is so low and they look so good and they're fun to play. Like Genshin Impact is just a very enjoyable game to play, at least from my perspective. and not only are you getting, like existing studios like Smilegate, but you're getting people who, spent their formative years as game developers and designers and stuff who were working at these companies who are now going on their own and doing their own stuff. So it's sort of like the indie renaissance that's happening in the West as well, where like people are like leaving Blizzard and then starting their own like independent studios.
Just because they're indie doesn't mean they're like neophytes. Like they're veterans. Like they have experience. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Mike, you were kind of saying off mic before we started filming that you haven't Gabe reviewed it for us, but you haven't really gotten a chance to play too much Lost Ark.
I have not. Okay. Like I said, I installed it and I was intrigued. I've had this a lot. The problem is that one can only have so many lifestyle games. So.
That's an excellent segue to our next topic. Another MMO that has been having a moment for a while now is Final Fantasy XIV, a game I know you've played a lot of.
Yes.
So what's up with Final Fantasy XIV, Mike?
I mean, we've just survived Endwalker, so we're in the middle of that patch cycle. And yeah, it's definitely blown up and it's become the heir apparent to World of Warcraft. And I remember, like, when WoW came out and a couple of years after, there was always that attempt to build the WoW killer.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the thing that actually killed WoW was WoW. And you just had to be the game that was also there, not screwing up in the same way. So like like 14 has always been very good. And with each expansion, they've gotten better and better. And then at the same time, WoW has been going through its stumbles. And then all of the Activision Blizzard stuff happened. And like combined with WoW already struggling with that Activision Blizzard talent drain because of those controversies, everyone's just looking for something else. And 14 just happened to be there and WoW adjacent enough that people were able to transition over relatively easy. I mean, outside of like I always said, I can't recommend Final Fantasy 14 to a lot of people because there's like a good 100 hours to get through the early content, like A Realm Reborn, which was the base, the rebooted base game.
When they made it good, when they fixed it.
Right. When they fixed it. And part of the way they fixed it is just like they looked to WoW and like, so what is WoW doing right at the time? Let's just do that. Like, you don't need to like vastly rethink. You don't need to make a new wheel. Someone else already did it. And then from there, they've like doubled down on what they do best, which is generally story. While the game itself still plays quite well. Like we don't need to change as much from expansion to expansion. We know exactly what we're doing. The content is fairly consistent to the point that people can be like, all right, patch 6.0 is out now. Patch 6.1 will probably drop in March. Like Square Enix is fairly consistent on their releases. So you always know what's coming. It stays very consistent. The story is great. So for a lot of people, it's just a very good game to drop into and leave. Like Naoki Yoshida, who's the creative director and lead producer, has said like, yeah, no, I don't need you to log in every day.
That's great.
If you play and you get through the content that we have and leave for a while, that's fine. Like it's all good. And of course it can work for that because it's a subscription MMO. So they're getting your $15 a month regardless. Whereas a game like Genshin Impact or Lost Ark, they need you to log in. They need you engaged.
Because they're totally free to play. So they need to like extract as much wealth as they can.
Right.
Gabe, you reviewed it. I was looking at our most recent review of it from you from like 2 years ago, and you were
for hot on it. Shadowbringers. Yeah. I'm actually still playing.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I'm still playing through Endwalker. I haven't chewed through all of it yet because I wanted to update the review with the new Endwalker perspective, maybe add a paragraph or two to it to kind of shape it up. But I wanted to add to what Mike was saying is that on top of being very, I guess, WoW-like and being there at the right time, it's also highly polished. Final Fantasy XIV is got a tremendous amount of, it's everything you would want in an MMO. like all of the social interactions, the housing, and then there's the guild, or they're not called guilds, but that's sort of like all of those systems that you would expect from a well-developed and like very well-aged MMO are just right there for you to jump into. Like there's, as far as I know, that you're not going to want for anything once you start playing that game. If you want all of those MMO systems, 14 has that, on top of being a really good story. And it's like a love letter to Final Fantasy. So it kind of appeals to MMO players as well as Final Fantasy players, which is, I think, testament to its success. Like everybody sees it and they go, I want to play that game. I mean, I think I might have even said in the review, it's probably one of the best Final Fantasy games in the series.
Could you talk a little bit more about that angle specifically, about how it relates to, because I mean, the Final Fantasy games, they're on their own universes and whatnot, but except for this and 11, like they're single player JRPGs. So like those connections must have.
This one is very much a love letter in the sense that I almost feel like I'm not a huge lore guy, to be completely honest with you. I like the story. I enjoy it. I do get this vibe, this sense that it's kind of connected to all the Final Fantasies in a way. And I like that it's not like a direct, this is, the events of 8 or 9 all directly impact that, but it feels connected to it nonetheless. It's references to all of the games in the past. A lot of the raids are references. I know the first raid in the game is basically like a recreation of the final dungeon in Final Fantasy III, the Crystal Tower. I know there's Kefka's in like the Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, so the Omega raids are all just like Final Fantasy. That like they reference a lot of old Final Fantasy
Absolutely.
stuff. And in terms of best Final Fantasy, I think part of that is the difference between a movie and a television show. And like a movie, you got like 2 hours and you're with X cast of characters for that 2 hours. For any one of the other Final Fantasy games, you're with, Cloud and his crew for 40 hours, 30 hours, whatever it is. And then that story is done. Maybe you get some extra stuff. Whereas, and Endwalker really trades on this heavily. You've been with the cast, the supporting cast that you're going through Endwalker with since A Realm Reborn. So you've been with them for 10 years, multiple seasons of a television show, essentially. So you've seen these characters grow and change, and that's part of what makes, and Endwalker was dubbed as the end of the story they started with A Realm Reborn.
Right. I was curious about that too, was what that even means.
So yeah, I'd say, I'm trying to think of a TV show like this where they finish a plot. Like this is from ARR to Endwalker. They have finished a whole plot arc.
Is it like Avengers Endgame, but there are still Marvel movies after this?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Exactly like that. So from Avengers from Iron Man to Avengers Endgame, that was one whole story. And now we're sort of in the next story, even though some of the characters carry over. That's exactly how it is. So they had a grand tale. They finished it, and tomorrow, actually, Naoki Yoshida and some people at Square Enix are going to have the live letter from the producer, and he says we're going to talk about the next decade of Final Fantasy XIV. So they are starting a new story, and in fact, usually the way FF14 plots run, once you get to the end of an expansion, like the launch patch, that usually doesn't end the story. Usually the story for that expansion ends like in the 3rd or 4th patch. But for Endwalker, the plot ended like in that launch patch. And all of the patches that will come after this are starting that new story.
Gabe, some of the stuff you were saying about how it relates to the other games, it reminds me of the Zelda timeline a little bit, or at least
a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit like that. And it's just like, it's not like directly like a continuation of the stories from that, but there's very strong references to each game that you kind of enjoy, especially if you take your time with it, which is what you're designed to do anyway. Like you're not really supposed to rush through Final Fantasy XIV. I learned that the hard way when I rushed through A Realm Reborn. It's like you're going to be playing like a long time. So you may as well sit back and enjoy all the references as they come. There's always like names that they drop, and you're like, if you played the game and you catch the reference, you're like, that's really nice. Like Yoga and
Stormblood, one of the main supporting characters is Prince Hien. And his father is Cyan from Final Fantasy VI. Doma is the city that Cyan is. It doesn't quite hit because in the US we got different names, but that's supposed to be the connection there. Like the dead king that we never see, who is only vaguely referenced by Hien, is supposed to be Cyan. So not exactly the same one, but
in America they changed his name to M. Bison. They wanted to flip it around so that they wouldn't get sued. Right. So we've kind of talked around World of Warcraft a fair amount here, but I just want to throw out here. So World of Warcraft was huge for like 16, 17 years at this point? Where's Warcraft at now? 18 even? 2004, 2022?
They just, I want to say 20, were they 20 or 25? Because they've released a WoW Anniversary Edition.
Okay.
Like, I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago.
My larger point here is that there's a kind of this, people are kind of seizing on this weakness. And do we think it's just because it's just been around for so long, like nothing can last? Is it because of all this Blizzard drama? Do you think that Microsoft may be turning around if there's like, hey, here's now console version on Game Pass? What do you think is kind of the future of WoW?
They've kind of been struggling since I'd say maybe Battle for Azeroth. So they had Warlords of Draenor, which was sort of a struggle expansion. Then they righted the ship with Legion. Then Battle for Azeroth was a struggle. And then Shadowlands has just sort of continued that struggle. And that's in terms of like mechanics, the story that's being told. Like there's just a lot of dissatisfaction with the direction. And that's by specific choices. And I think that combined with the talent drain is just like, that's leading to the exodus. It's context is everything. It's not just the game that's causing the suffer. It's not just the controversy. Mm-hmm. It's not just the fact that developers are leaving. It's all of those things together. And it's just like that feeling that WoW is on the downswing and it's going to be hard to pull off an upswing with the folks that are there currently.
I was going to echo that. I was going to say that I feel, and this is maybe the cynical part of me just reading stuff on the internet.
We're never cynical on the internet, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as I've seen, people have been complaining about WoW expansions since Burning Crusade. Like I've heard people say that Burning Crusade was like the last good expansion, and I'm like, that was ages ago. I guess I don't know. I don't really play WoW. I tried to get into it, and I was just like, whatever. But my point here is, I feel like people have kind of like waiting for an excuse to jump ship, and everything that happened last year kind of was like a perfect storm for them to use as an excuse to go, forget this, let me play something else. Whether or not that's accurate, I have no idea, but I mean, considering how 14 blew up over the winter, I'd imagine that that might have been the case. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable to be trying to looking for a reason to not play a game and playing for some people maybe like half of their whole lives.
Yeah,
momentum will just keep you going, and unless something, I always say like people won't change unless they truly hit rock bottom, and so like a lot of WoW players were just playing and they hadn't hit rock bottom yet, and just the entire conglomeration of all of those things plus one of the bigger WoW streamers moving over. There were a couple of them moving over to try FF14. And again, that goes back to the Lost Ark Amazon thing. Mm-hmm. Is that streamers are influencers, and influencers are approached by companies for a reason. Like if X streamer, in this case, one of the bigger ones was Asmongold. He was a WoW streamer. He moved over to FF14 for a while. He brought his audience from one game to the other. And if you can target the right people and get them to play your game and speak of it favorably, you can onboard a whole bunch of people very quickly.
Cool. So kind of my last point here. So yeah, there's all these new MMOs on the market. People are excited to try new things, fresh things. Where do you guys suggest they get started? What games should they consider picking up if they're like me, who's not really devoted any time to these? Where's a good game to get started? Let's start with Gabe.
I was going to say, well, I'm not sure if I'm exactly the best authority on this because I tend to play trash. And I'll openly admit, I still play Blade and Soul to this day. And I can tell you right now, don't play that game. Don't play it. I enjoy it so. The combat's amazing. I think it's so much fun. And I love the raids and how mechanic heavy they are. But the way that they've run that cash shop, I feel like they've ruined the game over the past couple of years. So I would say don't play that. If you want to play any kind of MMO, I would strongly recommend 14. If you don't mind the subscription fee, or you can overlook that, I think you can get everything you'd want from the MMO, like the quintessential MMO experience from 14. If you want something a little less, I guess, commitment heavy, maybe something slightly multiplayer like Genshin Impact, because you could still do some dungeon runs and stuff with that with some friends. It's much more casual. It's free to play. Can't go wrong with that. Lost Ark is also free to play, but like I said, I've played during in the playtest server, so I don't know what the actual live servers are like. I've heard that some of the waits are pretty crazy, like it's very, very congested, but I don't know if that's still the case. If I jump in there and I think that it's definitely worth playing, I definitely recommend it in the future. It looks good from what I've seen now, from what I played in the playtest server, but I would definitely say 14 is top of the list.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah. There's definitely like a gradient, and I still count certain live service games that don't call themselves MMOs as MMOs. I would say like at the top, if you want that classic WoW style MMO experience, start with 14. And then as you sort of work your way down, you can go from that to say Elder Scrolls Online, which is free to play and a decent MMO. Then there's something like Destiny 2, which is buy-in price to buy in, but there's no subscription after that. I have my own issues with the Destiny. And like I said, I call Destiny an MMO, and the fact that Destiny is vaulting content has always been one of my huge bugbears. Like, no, don't take stuff away. Just add more and find some way to keep that old content relevant. There's also, if you're moving below that, there's stuff like the Division 2 or Path of Exile is another one. Which is sort of those a lot of those live service online games still sort of live in that same area.
All right. Well, yeah, that's a lot to choose from. We've got coverage of Lost Ark and all sorts of MMO stuff on PCMag, so check that out. Gabe's written a lot of it. You can check out Mike Williams at Fanbyte.
Yes, every day. And you can also find me on Twitter at AutomaticZen, ZEN.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, folks, and we'll talk to you next time.